Getting back to the podcast, as far as topics, how did you decide what topics to focus on and then what guest to bring on to discuss the topics?
So a little bit are things that we want to know more about. Like if we're talking, I want to know more about artificial intelligence and its impact on democracy. So having guests in that can help educate us is really important. We had a really good podcast early with about energy and how we're going to balance the need that we all want to be kept warm and the lights on and be able to move from one spot to the other, but we're concerned about an increasingly warming planet. So we had Al Gore on, who's fairly famous for his environmental emphasis, and Jeff Lash, who runs TVA, who has to make sure your lights come on every morning. So people that can bring two different sides of an issue that we get that are important, and maybe I particularly like those issues where there's folks that don't really get the other side of the argument. Second Amendment gun rights being one of those. Like, I don't really understand how anybody could think it's okay to fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. Are there any topics that you won't touch?
Without being flip about it, I think we've probably tried to avoid topics that we think are just sort of like so firmly, the die is cast so firmly that you're not going to have an intelligent conversation about it. But no, I think we've tried to look for things that where there are some real differences of opinion, but in which you can have a conversation with people, and frankly to get people on the show who are not ones who are just there to parrot the catechism of one side or the other. The podcast that Bill just mentioned on global warming and the environment, I thought was really interesting because you had somebody who was a true believer, okay, but you also had somebody who didn't disagree with the fundamental premise that global warming is a problem, but had a different set of problems. He had to run, he had to provide power so you can turn your toaster on in the morning, and your lights on at night. And those to me are much more interesting questions than are you, do you believe or not believe in global warming, or are you for or against oil or something like that?
Well, one of the challenges is, like I said, we're trying to have it where it's a thoughtful presentation of two sides. It's easy to go get a passionate advocate on one side and a passionate advocate on the other, but I'm not certain they're going to illuminate. They're going to argue. And so one of the struggles we've had is to find those people who can thoughtfully, but in an interesting way, present the argument. Like I said, as you know from what you do, there's lots of people you can get that can come yell about how right they are.
In just listening to the podcast, the word listening, have we gotten to a point where we're not listening to each other? We're stuck in our silos, and therefore we're not willing to bridge the gap. And if that is the case, which I assume is, how do we as individuals bridge this?
I don't think it's as bad as that, because remember that what goes on, which you certainly know as well as anyone, what goes on in terms of public discussion is kind of more like the waves on the surface of the ocean. There's a few people who are very visible and make good TV and everything else on each side of the issue. But if I go back to go out to a Rotary or a Kiwanis or ordinary people or live in the community, they may have views on the things, but they're not like that in the sense of it's I'm totally right and everybody else is wrong and they're bad people because they got a different opinion. So I come away from generally with the feeling that if you can shut out what I call the waves on the surface of the ocean and look at the ocean, that there's a lot of people who really believe in this country, believe in the way of government we have, and know that we've got to get away from this sort of strong the way we're conducting the politics.
And I think just the message that you're sending here and with your podcast, two mayors who then became governor from two sides, different sides of the aisle, but coming together. What message do you hope that sends to the listener and to the viewer?
I think that was the whole point, is to have somebody from the Republican right side, somebody from the Democrat traditional left side, present views. There's lots of times we agree, by the way, a whole lot, but at least be able to present and challenge. I think the other thing that both of us realize is At the end of the day, these jobs are very practical jobs. People, think about it, you pay taxes to hire government that you can't do for yourself. You can't go fix all the potholes in the road, so you pay taxes to hire the government to do that. It's a very practical job, and I think one of the reasons we have some things in common is we both were mayors, where you literally, at the end of the day, most people care about their house on their street in their neighborhood, and help me with that, whether it's providing a great local school or whatever it is. The practical experience of being mayor and governor, I think, is one of the things that helps make this work.
I think that, the executive jobs, mayor and governor, in my mind, are much better ways to approach these ideological issues, because, if you're in the Senate or the Congress or the state legislature, and there's an issue with, I don't know, crime in Nashville, you make a speech about how awful it is, and this and that and the other. If you're mayor, you got to actually, Monday morning at 9 o'clock, you've got to figure out something to do. And just like in business, actually, putting a product out there in the market and seeing how it works is very healthy for the business. I think it's just healthy for the political process to actually have to execute something and make it work and solve problems. That's what I look for in people.